Good evening and welcome to a special bulletin from the Night Owls Broadcasting Corporation. We have scrambled an emergency podcast because...
Because of what? I don't know why. This just reminds me of Restless Politics when they do those emergency...
Because, what is the big news?
That you have uploaded, is that it?
Woo, woo, woo! Of course
Okay.
That's it. Of course. What else would be the big news? I mean, nothing else has happened in world events lately. Obviously, it's me uploading that everybody is talking about. That's filling the airwaves, hogging all of the above the fold newspaper space. Local man uploads YouTube video.
Yeah, and you've done really well because your previous video was a 50k Q&A and you're on 60k subs already. And
I know. What can I say? Yeah, 10k subs a video these days. That's this stuff's too easy, man. They should make it harder because I'm getting tired of winning. I have to say.
So I guess
it's so easy.
The question everyone wants to know is, why now? Why are you back?
Why did I come back to you? Why did I felt that the world needed my art. Do you know what I mean? I felt that the world needed an expressive, unique voice that really represents the people. And I wanted to upload again, which was nice. And I really enjoyed making the video. It's about a topic that every travel YouTuber has done at some point. There's so many Wuppertal Schwebebahn videos. And I think, like I've said on the podcast before, I see someone do something and I'm like, I could do that better. And it has actually been really nice to know that I did a topic that's been covered loads of times. And I've had plenty of people in the comments say like, oh, I've seen loads of videos about this, but yours is my favorite one. That's actually been really, really nice and really, vindicating. But I kind of feel like, even without saying it's like my favorite video that I really put my heart and soul into, I feel really proud of how I presented the information. I'm fighting the battle a lot more on Notion than on Final Cut these days. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I certainly do.
With writing the script and what order all of the bullet points are in. And I feel like my ability to sort of feel the flow of the video just from reading the words means... if I can edit the words in Notion, then I'm kind of saving myself hours of editing the video and like digging myself out of holes while it's still text before I read it out. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
And it was a really fun video to go make. Got to ride around in a flying train all day. It was very frustrating trying to make it because obviously if you've seen one of the shots, it goes past for like 3 seconds. Then you have to wait 5 minutes for it to come again. And then you get another 3 seconds of footage and it's like, oh, well... like has given up the will to live. Yeah, that was exactly how I felt. It's like, how am I going to get a 10-minute video out of this if I have to stand here all day waiting and then I get a few seconds of footage as it goes past? That was kind of difficult. But did you see the video where I included the 1900s footage?
Yeah.
It's from the Museum of Modern Art, and they have like a few minutes of one of the first rides in like 1902 or something crazy. And it's just absolutely mad how much things have changed, and how good the footage looks. Like, It's unbelievable. I think it's digitally colorized in the modern era, but the footage is still really nice.
I thought you did really well, and a really good job of doing what I think you want to kind of move towards, which is that sort of educational, historical aspect. I did feel, as well as, you know, it's just sort of nice to be along with you on the ride, I guess. You did explain everything very well on why it's such a weird
Thank you.
situation that city can do it.
Yeah. I think that was like the overarching thing, like how was this invented but didn't go around the world, and like it's just here and nowhere else. It's crazy. So
you're obviously quite proud, as you should be, that it's, you know, a well-made video, but do you also feel quite happy that it's the kind of thing you want to do more of?
I weirdly saw it as a bit of like a transitional video in the series of Germany videos that I'm doing. It probably wasn't my number one topic, but it was one that I had where I was like, this is my like proving ground to bring people with me from train videos to history videos. Because it's like reportage. I don't know if that's a German word or it also exists in English, but like going to a place and picking apart the interesting facets of the story and showing you something that either you might never have seen before or you might have seen but you didn't understand fully. And just sometimes I feel when I'm writing, I feel a little bit like a child, when they're in the like why phase. Because I feel it's quite unsatisfying if you leave a viewer like without, if there's still another level that they could why you, it's a little bit like you haven't done your job. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? So it's a little bit like I'm trying to really peel back the layers rather than being like, oh, this is cool, and just like leaving it like I used to do. Really going to like, but why, until I'm literally the one who's given you the entire package. Like you could watch it and not have to open another tab to Google something to check on another fact, because then you'll just get distracted, which I do in other people's videos all the time. I'm like, oh, this is really interesting, but it hasn't encapsulated everything for me. So I'm like, oh, I'll pause that, Google something, and then I've read like 10 more Wikipedia pages and it's like 1 a.m. and I have to go to bed and I never finish that video. I do that all the time. Yeah,
and also, like you say, not just reading the Wikipedia article
through
the video, which I certainly do sometimes. In fact, even the word-for-word quotes will make it in there.
I'll tell you what about that. So I'm writing my Nefertiti video, and I deliberately didn't use Wikipedia, and I used a lot of other sources, made all of my notes. I haven't even really started writing the video, but I finished like the research, I would say. And then just to check everything, I read the Wikipedia page and I was like, oh yeah, I've got that. I was like, I might as well have just done this the normal way that everybody does it. But because if you really consider it, the really good admins and editors on Wikipedia, they've essentially collated trivia from all over different sources and put it in order in this one page, which has citations. And I was like, in my research, making my notes app page about Nefertiti, that's the job that I have now done myself, which is like duplicated work. And I found a couple of things that weren't on the page, but in the end I was like, I should have just used this as a leg up, like I always do when writing a video. So I maybe kind of blew that. It is a really valuable resource. But yeah, it's essentially the kind of format that I would like to do, like going to a place and really deeply explaining it. It's not like nobody's ever done that before. I just have the hubris to think that I can do it better than anybody.
It is kind of a bit like Tom Scott in a way, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't know if you've seen his video about that train, but it's like 90 seconds long. It's really weird.
No, but
he just kind of stands next to it. He doesn't really say anything.
So why is it so short?
Yeah, I know. I think it is like 10 years old, so maybe his format, he hadn't quite nailed it down yet. But he went to this one random German city to do it. I mean, he's really there. And then he released like a 90-second just monologue, as if it was like an Instagram story, but horizontal.
Yeah, I guess that was of its time.
Yeah, maybe if he was like the first mover, that's fair. And it's obviously done really well for him.
Yeah.
But I mean, considering I hadn't uploaded in like 3 months, it's felt good. Views are okay. I think maybe we'll have a banger next time. It's totally fine. And I've been feeling the joy in releasing something again. Maybe if I post another few videos like this, they'll all pick up like as a series. That's what I'm trying to tell myself. And it's good that I put in the effort. I feel like I learned a lot doing it as well, to be honest. I find stories like that really interesting, where it's like from a time that you might have one picture of in your head, but then you look into it and it's like completely different. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And what about the process? Like you said, you spent more time in Notion.
Yeah, definitely writing for a long time, really trying to take care that all of the points link to each other, and also trying to take care. I felt a little bit like Christopher Nolan in some ways, like putting the scenes out of order, because I was like, I want to hit all of these, but everybody else, like we say, just reads the Wikipedia page in chronological order. But the thing with that is, when you're going to the 1800s for the first like half of the story, you don't have any footage or any photos to draw on. So it's like, how am I gonna manage this when the only thing I really have content of is the modern day part? So that's why it kind of jumps a couple of times. It's like, we have to go back, and then I go to the modern day because I actually have footage of it, and then it's like we have to go back again. So it's the part where I'm relying on photos for context and like still images is not just like one massive 6-minute block at the start. You kind of get it in like 3 2-minute blocks, so it's not as boring as if I literally did it in order and it was just me talking about the Industrial Revolution for ages. And yeah, I kind of had to take a lot of care with that, and also just like trying to keep people interested, like mentioning, by the way, the bit where I talk about the elephant is coming soon. And like I am gonna say it, and then like keeping that more towards the end of the video. I was trying to be fairly conscious of that. Sometimes I'm like dropping the cliffhangers again. I see people do it and I'm like, oh yeah, you're keeping retention by doing that. And sometimes I see people do it and I'm like, but you could have saved 20 seconds run time by just taking that sentence out. So I'm a bit conflicted on it sometimes.
Yeah, we're doing on the Paddy course. We're doing retention this week, talking about all that kind of stuff.
Nice. And what have you learned?
I think so much of it is kind of just what you touched on, which is getting rid of fluff and filler. You don't need to keep saying pointless stuff to just fill out the video. It's all sort of quite common sense, but I think we fall into these habits of just trying to like achieve these false goals of like, oh, got to get a longer video, so then you kind of just keep repeating stuff.
Yeah, one thing that I heard that I always keep in my mind when I'm editing is like, even after you've done everything, like you've recorded it, I mean, if you're editing and you hear a sentence that, like, if you notice that how the sentence before ended could just go on to how the sentence after starts, get rid of the sentence in the middle because it hasn't taken you anywhere. You can just join those two together. Interesting.
Where did you hear that?
Probably YouTube legend David Hartley told me it.
Did I say that? I doubt I would have said that.
No, it was definitely an American, but I don't know who it was. Yeah, to be honest, I have no idea. It was probably just some random Final Cut tutorial that I was watching.
Okay.
But they were like, if the sentence in the middle, if it would make sense without this sentence, just take it out. Go from A to C if B isn't doing anything unique for you. And I think I've kind of done that quite a lot. The thing I hate is sometimes B will have like a good joke in it or just like a good phrase, because I'm quite strict on like not reusing anything. So like at one point in that video I say gravity defying, but then I never say it again. And sometimes if in the B that I'm cutting out it has this one phrase, I'm like, damn, that was good, I would have used it elsewhere in the video if I knew I was going to cut this sentence out. So that can be quite frustrating.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that kind of stuff, little details. And you're going to hate me for this, but I saw a clip the other day of Russell Brand talking, and this
is not going to end well. Okay.
Have you ever heard him talk? And he uses like pointlessly long words.
Yeah, absolutely. He just ate a thesaurus one day and now thinks he's smart. Yeah.
And I don't know why he sort of does that, but I tend to really believe that you should simplify everything as much as possible.
Yeah. I think that's kind of what I was saying with like giving them a digestible nugget that encapsulates everything. Because I think if you don't do that, you're presuming foreknowledge of something. So you have to make it as simple and undemanding as possible. Do you know what I mean? Like, don't imagine that they have these great ability. People are like looking at their phone while they watch your video on the TV and everything. So you have to make it as digestible and simple and self-encapsulated as possible, I would say.
And something else that you told me once, I remember this. It was when I put my Roger Waters video out, and you said you were listening to it on the train.
Yeah, I remember that. And I was on my way to see you and I was like, I haven't seen his last video. I listened to it on the tube. I was like walking down the escalators with my AirPods in.
And that was actually quite an important thing to know, because it made me realise that the script should be good enough that you can follow along without having to watch the video.
Yeah. I have done that with your videos sometimes. Like if I'm cooking, I'll watch it, but I'll still stand up and go and look at the pot in the kitchen.
Mm.
But then I'll come back. But I have the AirPods in, and sometimes I'm like, oh, have I missed like some great visuals? But I think the story is compelling enough that I just want to hear it.
Yeah, so I try and always work around that. So instead of saying like,
What, my
oh,
dinner time?
sorry, what?
You try and always work around my dinner time.
No, I making a way to make it that you don't have to watch along.
Yeah.
Because I think if you're like, you're doing this nice script and then you're like, this is what Paul McCartney looked like in 1970. If you're at the pot, you've now got to go back 5 seconds.
Yeah, that's so true. It's like every podcast making the joke, like, oh, audio listeners aren't going to like this.
Yeah.
Like, oh, look at this. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's true. Yeah, but it's good to be back, releasing on YouTube. I definitely going to let this get to my head and say that I'm going to release loads of videos and then probably not do it. The classic cycle begins again.
Did you make a target for the year?
I did, yeah.
Did we say, what was it, 26?
Very, 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 very far behind. But you know what I'm not far behind on?
What's that?
Watching exciting movies that have just come out.
Exciting movies.
I cannot believe that a film that came to Germany later because it got delayed, I've now seen, and you didn't even see in its whole run in London.
I didn't. Someone else told me about this. They were like, "Oh, I saw the Dylan movie the other day, and I should see it." What did you think?
You definitely should. I absolutely loved it. I absolutely loved it. It was like, you know, people can sometimes get snooty about it, like including me. It's like, oh, they've just given you like an Elton John movie just to please the fans, and like it's probably not that good. But I was absolutely a pleased fan. Just seeing like these scenes like reenacted in HD and getting extra camera angles of them and stuff. And yeah, I really loved it. At times I was a bit suspicious about it at times. At times it kind of looked like a YouTube video in a weird way. I think kind of lacked a little bit of cinematicness at times. But then there was times where it completely blew me away. Like the first time that he plays Hard Rain in front of a big crowd. It was like really good. Really impactful. And I was sat there like I could have been sat at home listening to Dylan actually sing the song himself. But I'm like blown away watching essentially a glorified cover.
What years does it cover?
So it's an adaptation. I didn't actually know this. It's an adaptation of a book that I'd read called Dylan Goes Electric, which is Arrival in New York up to Newport Folk Festival 1965.
Okay.
So he plays Maggie's Farm on electric guitar and everyone's like, oh, we hate you and all this. And I thought, because I didn't know going into it, I was like, no spoilers, no nothing, even though obviously I know what happens. But I didn't know it was an adaptation of that book. So I thought we were going to get like Isle of Wight, maybe Rolling Thunder, like the whole thing. But it ends just, I think Highway 61 hasn't come out yet.
All right. So the Isle of Wight isn't mentioned.
No, Isle of Wight is not mentioned, unfortunately.
That's unfortunate.
So I guess that takes away a star, to be fair. I'll probably give it 4 stars. But yeah, I mean, I guess if it's one of those things that you're really into, you will just go to it and be pleased, like anything. It's like a Marvel fan, and they're like, oh, Captain America said this, which is a reference to some comic book nobody's ever heard of. And they jump up and down, and I'm like, why are you doing that? And then there was Dylan referencing like niche songs, and it was me jumping up and down. So like, I have no right to judge anybody. But I know that we talked on here last time about like song lyrics and stuff, and it was actually kind of weird for me to see, because obviously I love so many of his lyrics. It was lovely to see like we grew up in a world where his music is just like taken for granted that it exists, but the portrayal of Greenwich Village in the 60s, all of these like folk singers are having like all right careers. Some are kind of famous like Joan Baez, but everyone's just like covering the American standards. Maybe they've written a couple of songs and they're doing all right. And this guy comes in out of nowhere and just starts absolutely throwing right hands like every single day. Do you know what I mean? Like imagine that's been your whole life working on that career, and then this guy who isn't even like from New York or LA or anything just shows up one day and is like, oh, here's a song. It's called A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, and it's literally better than anything you've ever written in your life. All the times there are changing, or any of these songs, or Hattie Carroll. Like, how weird that must have been to go from those songs not existing to like existing, and how frustrating that must have been for everyone around him.
Yeah, and I was thinking about this the other day. I was thinking about some of Dylan's music, how like the lyrics really are the kind of legs that it's standing on. You're not to say that like musically it's pants or whatever, but the lyrics are what you're there for. Because he has this structure where he often doesn't have a chorus. He just has verse after verse after verse. And not many people do that.
Yes. And you have to really have faith in yourself.
Yeah, but I think that actually kind of helps the lyrics because the music doesn't get in the way. It's just sort of supporting.
Yeah, and that, I think that shows that he hasn't really lost or like turned his back on the folk scene completely.
Yeah,
because he's got some of those articles of the song structure. But I think what the film does a really good job of showing is like it comes from that like Pete Seeger world of everyone sitting around holding hands and singing like, oh, no nukes anymore, and like all of this, and into Dylan wearing sunglasses and doing drugs and playing like whatever songs off Blonde on Blonde. It shows that those two worlds like kind of colliding, and how frustrated everybody must have been that he's like the best ever at doing what they want to do, which is like writing anti-war songs or like pro peace and love songs better than anybody. And then after 2 years he's just like, I'm bored. Can I go and do something else now? It's bizarre to actually think about what it must have been like at that time. I was saying this to someone yesterday. I was like, imagine if we saw Messi win those 2 Champions Leagues in like 2009 and 10, and he just looked around and was like, I'm so much better than all of you. This is so boring. And then he like went to be like a film director or ran for president of Argentina or something, because he was like, this is no fun just being this much better than all of you. You suck. Like, get a life. Get on my level.
I think that is the key to the like immense high level of success that he and a few other people have had. Same with the Beatles. If they'd just done what they did with their first few albums again and again, it would have got boring very quickly. I think you have to evolve.
Definitely. And then there's me as like a 13-year-old when the Killers release Human, like one of their best songs with like some great lyrics on it, just being like, oh, there's no guitar. I want them to do Sam's Town again.
Yeah, I think you have to just keep evolving, and
yeah, definitely.
Dylan has sort of always done that.
He's like a shapeshifter.
Yeah, and because he's done so much stuff, that, you know, I guess you could say there's few artists whose music I don't like that much, but because there's so much, so much great stuff in there that it kind of overshadows.
Yeah, absolutely.
The misses, if you know what I mean.
I feel like he's one of those things that, like, the catalogue, the longer you mine it for, you'll be like, oh my god, this is a great song and this is a great song, but like I've never heard of it. And you see them pop up all over, like Adele, or what was that song? Is it like Gabrielle? Do you know this song from like the noughties?
So.
It's like the only time Dylan's ever authorized a sample of one of his songs. It was called like, is it Gabrielle? She did a song called like Stand Up or something.
Oh yeah, she did a song called Rise.
Rise, yeah, that's it. And there's all of these places in like popular music that are like directly standing on Dylan's shoulders, and it's like, imagine if that one person didn't write all of those songs. And loads of people have had big hits like off his songs. And also the film, I think, showed really nicely how weird it must have been for him to become famous, and then suddenly Johnny Cash is covering your songs on the radio. That must have been like, what the hell? Like, Johnny Cash is one of my heroes, and now he's covering my songs. Like, that's crazy. But it did, I mean, for me personally, I do think like it was better when he stopped doing political songs.
Okay.
But I can kind of see where people are coming from, that like they wanted a spokesperson for their like generation and their time, and it was frustrating to them that he had no interest in being that spokesperson. Like, he was really good at writing songs, but he didn't want to be the one like leading the picket line. Do you know what I mean? Do you think Do you think a song should have or that's something we look to music for, even now in our generation, that it should lead the conversation and have a political meaning?
I honestly don't know, and I don't know what role politics should have with anything art or football. I think
Yeah, that's a good one.
personally, it's different with Dylan because he kind of started there and came out of that. My favorite Dylan songs, I really like Times They Are Changing, but my favorite ones come a bit later.
Yeah, same.
Um,
But what I would say is, I hadn't until I watched the movie. I went back home and I listened to the Times They Are Changing album in full. I don't think I'd ever done that, but I know all of the songs because they're on like Rolling Thunder albums from the 70s and 80s. But he
Right.
plays them electric with full band. So to me, they're rock and roll songs. And I was like, oh, this is like an acoustic song he did when he was like 19 that I've never listened to. But I knew all the words because I've heard him do rock and roll versions of them. And I think that is a sign of a good artist.
yeah, and my favorite version of Times They Are Changing is a later live one,
Yeah.
where it's rocked up a little bit.
And I think he's great at that. And he writes like even different verses for them, which is so weird. There's some songs on like Nashville Skyline where he changes every single verse to do it live, but they're all just as good. It's not like, oh, this isn't the real version. It's like, damn, this could have been the real version. He's just like maybe the single most person ever like putting words in an order that an audience will like. Like, I don't know anybody who's ever done it like that.
I wonder as well what it must have been like at the time, because I kind of mentioned this in my iceberg video, how things age quite well. So I think we look back on this and be like, oh, it's so great that he did these kind of protest songs. But I think if someone did that now, there's an element of like, I don't know, why are you doing this kind of thing?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, does it even play that role today? Like, who is doing that today? We have people doing it for equality for black people. That's probably the equivalent.
Yeah,
we don't have songs about like don't hunt whales and like I don't know. There's no song for like turn the tap off while you're brushing your teeth. I guess it is like justice and equality, like Kendrick say. Some of his lyrics would be what I would say is the modern comparison. Like a genius who is great at writing music and using it to get a point across really effectively.
I guess my first answer would be something like it's a lot more commercialized, a lot of the mainstream stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas I think Dylan would have like written songs and be like, this is how they are, take it or leave it.
Yes.
Whereas now...
Because by the time you've heard it, he's written 18 more because he's been up all night.
yeah. But I think if like, I don't know, Ed Sheeran writes a song, probably there's like a focus group at his label that's like...
Yeah, absolutely.
Could you say it this way or something like that?
Yeah, and there's like 50 people's careers who are like his whatever stage manager, Instagram caption writer, stylist. Like, he's got an entire career resting on his back of like not rocking the Apple cart, I guess.
Yeah, Ed Sheeran's a good example because, you know, the kind of aesthetics of the music is him and guitar quite similar to Dylan a lot of the time. But it would be so weird if...
And yet he writes such crap.
Yeah, if Ed Sheeran came out with like anti-nuclear stuff or whatever.
Yeah, that's so true.
It just wouldn't fit what we think of him.
That's so true. Although, what I will say, I mean, probably my viewpoint is very clear because I said like I like his later, less political songs more. So would probably argue that like we don't need music to fill this role in our life. I mean, even to the point that like if I'm engaging with political stuff all day and I have an hour of music listening in the evening, I want to distract myself. But what I would say, if anybody was going to level, I don't know why we're using Ed Sheeran as an example, but say someone was going to say like, you know what, he has a platform and he hasn't even used it to say that we shouldn't be nuking people. What the hell? Maybe he thinks we should. I think sometimes it gets a bit like that, like, because I don't do anything political on like YouTube. Some would argue I don't have an audience to get a message across to. But there's some topics where I'm just like, I see people go on about them and I'm like, I hope that people who watch my videos are cutting me enough slack that they know my opinion on this. That I think like XYZ crime against humanity is wrong and I don't need to come out and say that. Like, I'm hoping that people know what my opinion is without me having to say it. Do you know what I mean?
Okay, yeah, okay. I think I've kind of put my finger on it, which is, firstly, the reason I like the later Dylan songs, and not because they're not political, but just because he can write some really beautiful love songs. He's like really great at that. But I think the reason it wouldn't work with Ed Sheeran, sorry if you're listening, Ed Sheeran, but I wouldn't put you down as a beautiful songwriter. They're fine pop songs, but I think Dylan could do that. So I think when he delivered a message politically, he could say it really well. Now, interestingly, today, there are people who I'll see a video of on like a podcast or something, and they won't be songwriters, but they'll put a point across so well, so beautifully, that in its way becomes the political message that Dylan left void.
I see. What you mean? There's like people on YouTube who are filling this sort of role.
Yeah, and I guess an example that I've been seeing recently is Gary's Economics. Now, I don't know if this is a perfect fit, but he's someone who I think does a very good job of communicating his message. I think it's a good message. I'm sure he's, you could pick holes in it in some ways. But I think he is kind of the Dylan of his day. It's just that today's medium is not the acoustic guitar. It's the podcast.
This machine poons noobs.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. It's a different battlefield now, and you reach people in a different way. Have you seen? It just came to my mind when you were saying that for some reason. Do you know the clip from the Dylan interview where it's like the only interview he's given as an old man, and the guy's like, "What do you know about organic vegetables?" And Dylan is like, "Absolutely nothing." Do you know this?
I think I know the interview, but not that clip.
Yeah, it's just like, absolutely nothing. Because like when they wanted, peace and love and Woodstock and everything, and like, you're writing these songs, therefore you're the figurehead of it. He says people were like climbing on the roof of his house trying to get him to go to a protest about like stopping like chemicals or like DDT going on plants and stuff. And he had to be like, I don't know anything about organic vegetables. Like, please leave me alone. But yeah, on the topic of modern artists, what did you listen to any of the Drake Kendrick songs?
No, I'm not really into that.
Same. Who would Ed Sheeran do that about? It would be like Ed Sheeran and Hosier.
Maybe. I don't even know what Hosier's doing at the moment.
It would be Ed Sheeran and Gautier, like absolutely knocking blocks off each other in the top 40.
You mean like beefing?
Yeah.
I can't imagine Ed Sheeran doing that with anyone.
No. Can't imagine him doing anything interesting. That's a little treat for anybody who's listened this late into the show. I guess it would be, what is that version of beef? I guess it's like Twitter spats now. Yeah,
that's probably it. It's probably social media. It's like, when Zuckerberg and Musk were going to have a wrestling match or whatever.
Yeah, that's bizarre. Did you care about the Kendrick halftime show? This is how topical Night Owls is. We're like 6 weeks behind.
Yeah. I think I saw a bit. I can't remember much of it, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that's either... Sometimes I really struggle because I engage so much with American culture to tell what is the difference between Brits and Americans and what is just something that I don't really care about and it's just me. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And I have this a lot with like celebrity culture. One of my American friends sent me an SNL sketch, and I was just like, "Is this funny?" Like, I literally don't get it. And he was like, "Say it was, I don't know. I'm trying not to give it away. Say it was like Madonna who had acted in it." And he was like, "But it's funny because it's Madonna." And I was like, "Does that make it funny?" Like, I don't know. I didn't really get it. Like, I didn't laugh at all. And I felt the same thing like with Kendrick. I was just like, it's a really good song, but I don't get why, like, it's more famous because he's calling out Drake in it. Like, why can't he just write such a good song about literally anything else? Why does everything have to be a celebrity gossip column all the time? I know in like hip hop and rap, there's always been like feuds, and that's like part of the culture. But I felt a little bit like it was getting, I don't know, like it's not a big deal just because like celebrities mention each other.
Yeah, and I don't know. I really sort of have no time for that. I kind of think it's a bit um, sort of below us as a society to
Yeah,
care about that
and
kind of
below
thing.
Kendrick as an artist. Like if you've listened
Yeah,
to Good Kid, Mad City or To Pimp a Butterfly, you'd be like, "Oh, what's he doing now?" And it's like, "Oh, saying that Drake's Choice of Partners is illegal." You'd be like, "What? Those albums are so good. Why can't you just do more of that?" Like every minute that he's spending in gossip columns to me is kind of wasted. Like we don't get great artists like that that often. And you know, imagine if Dylan was spending his whole career saying Joan Baez is a whatever in the newspapers, like instead of writing blood on the tracks. Like that would have sucked.
I was going to say actually, this might sort of reveal a bit of an imposter in me, but I think since To Pimp a Butterfly, I basically haven't listened to any
Yeah, same.
Kendrick,
Yeah,
and that's now like
true.
10 years old.
That is also true. Yeah, there is like 2 Kendrick albums that I haven't listened to, so maybe I shouldn't complain about there not being enough Kendrick music.
But yeah, so whenever anyone talks about him, I'm kind of like, I'm not really up to date with what he's doing. It's been 10 years since I listened to anything he put out.
I get that. Yeah, yeah.
In fact, I don't really know. Damn came after that, I think.
Yeah, Damn. But he sampled Rat Boy on Damn,
I don't know. I didn't really listen to it, but
which is just crazy looking back now. Oh, actually, I is on Damn. Do you know I, his song? That is really good. I think that's a protest song because
okay.
it's about the police. But that is actually a really good song. So yeah, maybe actually to wrap it up, he's like our modern equivalent, doing protest songs that are also catchy.
Maybe. We'll see how it ages. I think that's the thing. I think Dylan has aged very well. And so
Not his
when
voice, but his songs.
yeah. So maybe in like 40 years or whatever, we'll be like, oh, Kendrick was really onto something there. But
Do you think you could do a tier list of? I know you're not looking to branch out into new formats right now, so maybe I'll just pack the idea in right there. Do you think you could do a tier list of the greatest artists of all time? And I mean literally like Michelangelo, Da Vinci, Paul McCartney, David Hockney, and like rank them. Frank Lloyd Wright.
On what merit would you rank them?
I was just trying to think if there's another link that we could find. Like, if we found 2 great artists from different time periods, could you compare artists even from different mediums?
Okay, now this is something I've been thinking about because I listened to a few video essays that I heard Jack Conte talking about. One is about Van Gogh, how basically
I think I meant Van Gogh when I said Da Vinci, to be fair.
So I don't know how long he lived. He started painting when he was 27, but he died when he was, let's see, 37. Okay, so for 10 years, he kept painting, selling one painting. So that was one of the video essays. The other one was that Da Vinci had this like really big dip in his career, So I think his 20s
He
were
fell
pretty
off.
good. Yeah, he did. So I think from like 30 to 46, he fell
Wow.
off.
He fell off. Classic Da Vinci L.
But the thing I wanted to point out that is missing from a lot of music, modern music, is how relentlessly the great artists just keep putting stuff out. Like Bach would have to bring a piece to church every week.
I know, they don't stop bloody going on about it in Leipzig. Jesus, Bachfest this, Bachfest that. Oh my God.
And I think
You know,
Van Gogh.
it's weird to go from Bach to a different cultural reference. Do you know Steve Marsh on YouTube? I was actually thinking that literally today. I was like, from when I first saw one of his videos a few years ago, he has not stopped pumping out videos.
Yeah.
He has not stopped for 30 seconds. And I was like, I think that's one of the secrets to his success. He's just a relentless maker of things.
It absolutely is. And it's the one thing all the great artists and all the...
Frank Ocean. Ha! Gotcha!
Exactly. It's like... So I think... There's so many examples. I think Stevie Wonder wrote 200 songs in a year once. And it's like, what is Frank Ocean doing?
That's crazy. I do love it, like again with the Dylan thing, where you go back and look at the discography and you see years come up again. It'll be like 1962, 1962, 1963, 1963. And you're like, oh my God, what were you doing? Must have just been sat there with a notebook like, ah! And yes, Stevie Wonder songs have like so much production. That's actually insane. How could you even do that? If someone chained me up in a room, I couldn't write 200 songs.
I think that is the common link between all the great artists, is they kept working. And I think it's just that there's something to it in that it stops you thinking if you just keep going.
Yeah, you don't dwell on the previous one you've just done if you have a new idea. And then you turn around, by the time you take a breath, you're like, oh, I've come so far. I could see that being true. Yeah,
absolutely. And, you know, to sort of give him a little bit of credit, one thing he has done very well, Joe Rogan, is he pumps out so many episodes.
Man. I don't know who's listening to this. I genuinely don't know who's listening to this. It's insane. They're like 4 hours long. I'm just like, oh my God.
Yeah. And you can go back, and I think he started in his home office or whatever it was, talking about wrestling, whatever he's into. And like, he's just kept going. He hasn't stopped. Like, that's why he's number one, because he hasn't stopped.
That's so true. That's really, really true. He just goes for it. Even he's sat in that same seat wearing the same headphones despite having infinite money. Like, if you were really sat there looking at his YouTube analytics, like, imagine seeing those graphs on that channel that has like 5,000 episodes or something, if you add everything together.
Yeah.
And like how much the watch time and the money must be going up like every second, and you still choose to spend your life sat in the same seat doing the same thing. That shows that you love it. That's kind of like Casey Neistat. I make money to make videos, not I make videos to make money.
Yeah. My recording stopped.
Thank you, everybody, very much for listening to this episode of Night Owls. I have lost my co-host, Mr.
I'm in the dark, I imagine.
Oh, right. Sorry, I thought your mic was gone as well. I was about to insult you, but I won't if you're here on audio. Anyway, thank you, everybody, very, very much for listening. We appreciate your ears, and we hope you appreciated our voices today, and can't wait to see you again soon.